I mean, just imagine trying to grade, like a 15-year-old, on how well they understand the exact algorithm that is currently, rewiring their brain.
Right, yeah.
How do you even begin to assess someone's grasp on these invisible digital forces that are shaping their entire reality? Today, we are opening up a stack of curriculum documents for this deep dive that attempts to do exactly that.
It is a truly fascinating set of materials. We're looking at the foundational documents for a Level 1 assessment, specifically Achievement Standard 92048, which basically guides students through a really comprehensive social media inquiry.
And whether you're a parent trying to help a student prep for this exact assessment or, you're just a curious mind trying to figure out the mechanics of the digital world you interact with every single day, this curriculum is a goldmine.
Oh, absolutely.
Because what we're looking at here represents this massive shift in how we learn. I mean, education is no longer just about teaching students how to memorize reality. This is really about teaching them how to verify if reality is actually real.
Yeah, that is the exact paradigm shift at the heart of this. The curriculum formalizes the kind of critical thinking required to just, well, survive an information-saturated world.
Right.
So today, we're going to break down how students earn their 5 credits for this assessment. We'll look at the specific mechanics of how they conduct this research, and then we will dive deep into the 4 mandatory themes that every student has to tether their findings to.
Which are global flow, diversity and inclusion, human rights, and the dynamic nature of identity and culture.
Exactly.
Those 4.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we get into those massive philosophical themes, we really need to understand the mechanics of the mission itself.
Yeah, the how is just as important as the what here.
Right, because how these students are asked to research is incredibly revealing. So they're giving 4 to 5 weeks to investigate the flow of ideas and opinions on social media. But the absolute golden rule here is that it has to start with an open-ended focus question.
Yes.
They can't just type, like, is fake news bad,
Right.
into a search bar and call it a day. Exactly, because is fake news bad is a closed loop. It's a yes or no question that just doesn't demand any deep investigation. The curriculum specifically requires questions that investigate the why or the how.
So what would a good question look like?
Well, a student might ask something like, how is gym bro culture spreading via social media, and what physiological effects is it having on teenage boys?
Oh, wow.
Or, how does specific COVID-19 conspiracy theories bypass traditional media fact-checkers, and what offline impacts did that have in local communities? You see, those questions require dismantling a process to see how the gears actually work.
And to dismantle that process, the students have to pull from a very specific mix of evidence. I mean, they can't just rely on a Wikipedia summary. The assignment demands both primary and secondary sources.
Which is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, because the primary sources are where this gets incredibly hands-on. Primary sources are direct, firsthand evidence, right? So in this context, that means the students are treating the platforms themselves as the field site.
They are literally out in the digital field.
Yeah. They might conduct and record interviews with other users or deploy online surveys or literally just sit down and analyze the comment sections of specific TikTok live streams or look at the engagement metrics on an Instagram profile.
Which is such an empowering way to approach the subject, honestly. It turns their everyday scrolling habit into an active field of study.
Totally.
But the curriculum is very clear that subjective firsthand data just isn't enough on its own. It has to be triangulated with secondary sources.
Right, the more traditional stuff.
Exactly. Those are the academic journals, the long-form investigative news articles, the research reports. That's information created by someone who is stepping back and analyzing the events rather than just, participating in them on the timeline.
Okay, and here is where we need to look at the grading rubric because it illustrates the exact cognitive leap these students are expected to make.
The 3 tiers.
Yeah, there are 3 tiers here: achieved, merit, and excellence. So if a student simply gathers their primary and secondary sources and describes what they found, say they just write, here is a viral post and here is a news article talking about that post, they get an achieved.
Correct. They have successfully identified the what.
Right.
To move up to the next tier, merit, they must take that evidence and actually explain their findings. They have to articulate the mechanics of how that post went viral and use their collected evidence to support that explanation.
So if we look at this like a kitchen setting,
Oh, I like this.
achieved is just a student opening the pantry and listing the ingredients of a meal.
Yeah.
Merit is the student explaining the recipe, the cooking techniques used, and how those ingredients chemically reacted in the oven.
Yes.
But to get excellence, you have to act like a Michelin star food critic. You have to evaluate why the meal matters in the grand scheme of the culinary world, critique the chef's intent, and really judge its cultural impact.
I love that analogy, and it perfectly aligns with the curriculum's language. The specific requirement for excellence is evaluating findings.
Evaluating.
Right, that means critically connecting ideas, making independent judgments, and drawing well-reasoned conclusions about the broader societal implications of whatever topic they chose to look at.
Wait, I just have to stop you there for a second. Looking at this rubric, they actually expect high schoolers to evaluate transnational information flows and their societal implications.
I know, it sounds wild.
I mean, I know grown adults who have been on the internet for 20 years who cannot do that. Isn't this asking a bit much of a 15-year-old?
It is an incredibly high bar, absolutely. But that is precisely why the curriculum doesn't just ask them to jump without a safety net. It provides a very rigid framework to help them structure that evaluation. That leap to excellence is where those 4 key themes come in. The students don't have to evaluate the entire universe. They just have to take their specific, narrow topic, like the spread of a single viral beauty filter, and pass it through the lens of one of 4 massive concepts.
Which are global flow, diversity and inclusion, human rights, or identity and culture.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes so much more sense. The themes are essentially the training wheels for critical evaluation.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's look at the first one, the global flow of information. The curriculum defines this as how ideas, trends, news, and misinformation spread across the world instantly, bypassing traditional borders to influence cultures and politics.
And the source materials provide a phenomenal historical blueprint for students to understand how this mechanism actually works, which is the Arab Spring.
Right.
This was just a watershed moment for understanding global flow. I mean, before social media, if a government wanted to control the narrative, they simply seized control of the state television and radio stations.
So that was the only way to broadcast.
Exactly. But during the Arab Spring, activists in countries like Egypt and Tunisia bypassed those state-controlled bottlenecks entirely.
Because suddenly, everyone had a broadcasting studio in their pocket.
Yes.
They were taking cell phone videos of protests and police crackdowns and uploading them directly to Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. It was pure citizen journalism, completely unmediated by any state authority.
And we have to look at how the architecture of those platforms facilitated the flow. It wasn't just that the videos were online, right? It was the use of specific hashtags that allowed localized outrage to aggregate into a global searchable database.
Like a digital filing system for a revolution.
Exactly. A user in New York could follow a hashtag and watch a revolution unfold in real time in Cairo. The sources note that this transnational influence was massive, inspiring and providing a tactical blueprint for later movements around the world, like Occupy Wall Street.
But the materials are also very quick to point out that the architecture of global flow doesn't have a moral compass.
No, not at all.
The exact same digital infrastructure that allows democratic activists to coordinate a global protest also allows for the rapid transnational spread of conspiracy theories.
Yeah, the algorithm doesn't care.
Right. It doesn't care if the information is a verified video of a protest or a totally fabricated story about COVID-19. It only cares about engagement. If it generates clicks, the algorithm will amplify it across borders, feeding extremism and cultures of hate just as efficiently as it feeds democratic ideals.
Which is a terrifying but necessary realization for these students.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. So, information flows globally and instantly. But that assumes everyone has equal access to the platform, or that everyone's voice carries the same weight, which obviously isn't true.
Far from it.
How does this curriculum address the fact that the quote-unquote global flow often leaves out marginalized voices entirely?
That is the perfect question, and it is exactly what drives the second theme, which is diversity and inclusion. If the first theme is about the speed and reach of the network, this theme asks students to investigate how that network actually treats the diverse groups within society. Does the architecture of social media naturally support marginalized voices, or does it inherently suppress them?
So it feels like social media is a giant worldwide megaphone.
Yeah.
Global flow dictates how fast and how far the sound from that megaphone travels. But diversity and inclusion asks who is actually allowed to hold the megaphone and who is just getting yelled at.
That is a brilliant visual. I really like that. And the materials ask students to look at both who holds the megaphone and what happens when they speak into it.
So what's the positive side of that?
Well, on the positive side, social media provides unprecedented opportunities for minority groups to find connection. The sources specifically highlight the diaspora, people living far outside their traditional homelands.
Right.
A teenager living thousands of miles away from their cultural roots can use these platforms to find immediate solidarity, language practice, and representation that simply does not exist in their physical neighborhood.
But the flip side of that is how the platforms actively fail diverse communities. The materials ask students to investigate the mechanics of online echo chambers.
Yeah, the bubbles.
Because the algorithms are designed to keep you on the app, they constantly feed you content that aligns with what you already engage with. If a user starts interacting with biased or stereotyped content, the algorithm isolates them.
It groups them with similar users.
Exactly, feeding them increasingly extreme versions of those stereotypes. It creates a bubble where discrimination thrives because dissenting voices are just algorithmically filtered out.
They never even see the counter arguments.
But wait, when governments or the platforms themselves step in to regulate who holds that megaphone, when they start adjusting the algorithms to decide what is allowed to be said and what isn't, doesn't it immediately trigger a massive conflict?
It absolutely does. And that friction brings us directly into the third theme, which is human rights.
Ah, of course.
The moment you start regulating the global flow of information and dealing with diverse populations, you are navigating the extremely volatile territory of fundamental rights. The curriculum defines this theme as how social media allows for sharing and changing perspectives and values around human rights on a global scale.
And again, they present this as a complex societal debate for the students to unpack impartially.
Very impartially.
They point to the undeniably powerful role social media has played in documenting human rights abuses. When a bystander captures a video of a civil rights violation and it goes viral, it creates an international pressure cooker that traditional localized power structures simply cannot contain.
Yeah, the world is watching.
The curriculum specifically lists movements like #MeToo, #BlackLivesMatter, and global trans advocacy as primary examples of online platforms being leveraged to force progress on human rights issues.
It allows the powerless to hold the powerful accountable in the court of global public opinion. But the assignment demands that students critically evaluate the counterarguments and the gray areas, too.
Right, it's not all positive.
Exactly. They are asked to investigate the immense tension between holding tech companies responsible for stopping hate speech and protecting the fundamental human right to free speech. Where exactly is the line drawn, and, who gets to draw it? A Silicon Valley CEO, a local government.
And the human rights theme isn't just about what we say, it is about what the platforms know about us. The sources dive into data privacy and the dark side of our digital footprints.
Yeah, the surveillance aspect.
We're talking about the mechanics of how regimes use digital surveillance, metadata, and location tracking to identify, target, and silence activists. It's the reality that the exact same tool used to organize a protest can be used by authorities to geolocate and arrest the protesters.
It is an incredibly heady topic to navigate for anyone, let alone a student, which naturally leads into the fourth and final theme, which is perhaps the most intimate lens for them, and that's the dynamic nature of identity and culture.
Looking inward.
Exactly. Once you understand the global flow, the diversity of the network, and the human rights at stake, you have to look inward. How does this digital ecosystem change how we view ourselves, and how does it force our cultures to evolve?
And to help students unpack this, the curriculum introduces several core social studies concepts that are deeply rooted in the New Zealand context of the curriculum.
Yes.
And they don't just want students to define these words, they want them to use them as analytical tools. They introduce Tukiratanga, which is identity, Wakapapa, which is genealogy and the complex framework of interrelationships between all things, Kotahitanga, meaning collective action and unity, and Manamotohake, which speaks to self-determination and the ownership a community has over what they value.
And applying those concepts to a digital landscape yields some really fascinating insights. Take Wakapapa, for instance.
Right.
In a traditional sense, it's your family tree and ancestry. But in a digital context, a student might evaluate their online Wakapapa, the lineage of the ideas they consume, the network of who they follow, who follows them, and how those digital interrelationships shape their entire worldview.
Oh, that's really cool. Or look at Manamotohake self-determination.
Yeah.
The sources highlight how cultures are being actively revitalized online.
Yes, the language aspect.
A prime example given is the promotion of Te Reo Māori on social media. When Māori youth create digital spaces to share and normalize their language on platforms like TikTok or Instagram, that is Manamotohake in action. It is a community taking ownership of their cultural identity and carving out a self-determined space in the global digital flow.
But again, the curriculum forces them to look at how that same mechanism can be destructive to identity. We talked earlier about the inquiry into gym bro culture.
Right.
How does the constant algorithmic barrage of hypermuscular physiques alter a teenage boy's tuakiratanga, his core sense of identity?
Or global beauty filters. A student can investigate exactly how a filter subtly alters a user's perception of normal human facial structures. Shrinking the nose,
Yeah.
enlarging the eyes, smoothing the skin.
It's so normalized now.
It really is. It is not just a fun photo effect. It's a real-time modification of identity that creates profound body image issues across entirely different cultures. Social media doesn't just hold up a mirror to our identity. It actively reaches through the glass and molds it.
Which brings us to one of the most critical and technically complex parts of the source materials. The warm-up worksheets for this assignment focus heavily on the concept of fake news and specifically deepfakes.
Yes. The curriculum actually has students watch materials explaining the underlying mechanics of deepfakes, specifically GANs, or generative adversarial networks.
Which is fascinating tech.
And we really should explain how this works because it's brilliant and terrifying all at once. So, a GAN involves two distinct artificial intelligence neural networks basically battling each other.
Right.
One AI, the generator, acts like a master forger, trying to create a fake image or video of a person. The second AI, the discriminator, acts like a detective, analyzing the image to see if it can spot the forgery.
Exactly. And they fight this battle millions of times in rapid succession. The forger creates a fake, the detective spots the flaw, the forger learns from that mistake, improves the fake, and tries again.
It just keeps looping.
Yeah, this loop continues until the generator creates synthetic media so flawlessly realistic that the detective AI can no longer tell it from reality.
And if the AI detective can't tell the difference, a human scrolling on their phone doesn't stand a chance.
None at all.
So if identity is fundamentally based on how we see ourselves and how we perceive the actions of others, how does a student evaluate identity in a world populated by GANs? I mean, we have moved completely past textual misinformation here. We are now dealing with the mass production of synthetic reality.
And that realization is the ultimate synthesis of this entire deep dive. When video evidence can be synthetically generated to look exactly like a real politician or a real activist saying something they never actually said, how do we know what is true?
It's a scary thought.
This is exactly why the excellence tier of that grading rubric demands critical evaluation. It is not enough for a student to just say, oh, this video is a deepfake.
Right. They have to explain the how and the why.
Precisely. They have to evaluate why the deepfake was created in the first place. How did it leverage the global flow to bypass fact checkers? Who in the diverse landscape was it designed to target or manipulate?
Right.
Does it violate human rights by inciting violence? And what does it mean for our shared cultural identity when seeing is literally no longer believing? Understanding these four themes isn't just an academic hoop to jump through for 5 high school credits. It is a fundamental survival skill for the 21st century.
It really, really is. And to wrap up their inquiry, the students actually get to choose how they present all of these complex findings.
Which is great. They have options.
Yeah, they don't just have to write a standard 800-word essay. They can record a 3 to 5 minute podcast, film a mini documentary, or build a digital presentation. But regardless of the format they choose, the core mission is identical. Process your raw, primary, and secondary evidence through the lenses of global flow, diversity, human rights, and identity.
It is ultimately an exercise in building a cognitive immune system. It teaches them to defend against manipulation while still recognizing the incredible, unprecedented power these platforms have to connect marginalized people and uplift voices that were previously silenced.
So what does this all mean for you? You've heard what the students are doing, you understand the mechanics of the research, and you know the 4 themes. How do we take this out of the classroom and into our own lives?
Well, the next time you're scrolling through your own social media feed, try applying this exact grading rubric to your own habits. Are you just functioning at the achieved level, mindlessly consuming content and taking it at face value?
Most of us probably are.
Yeah. Or are you pushing yourself toward excellence by critically evaluating how the content in front of you connects to the global flow of information? Ask yourself how the algorithm is actively shaping your own digital identity in real time. What if we all treated our daily doom scrolling as a personal, ongoing social studies inquiry?
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If these 15-year-old students are spending 5 weeks in a classroom learning how to systematically deconstruct the algorithm, well, how long will it be until the AI algorithms learn to systematically deconstruct the students' defenses? Think about that the next time you log on. Thanks for diving deep with us.